Hey guys, welcome back to Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. My name is Tom, and in this episode we're going to be continuing over to No Man's Wharf. But before we do that, I feel I should explain a little bit about this recording process and just how things are going to work for this entire series. Basically, I record in about maybe 3-hour bursts, so that gives me about 3 videos or 4 videos out of one recording session. And basically, I edit those intermittently, day to day, when I'm basically just not doing anything else or anything in my personal life. And because of this, some episodes may come out slower than others. It really just depends on how much time I have during the days off that I get to work on these videos. So some might come out day to day, and then some other ones might come out every 3 or 4 days. I do apologize, that's just me not having enough time in my week to put out a video every single day. What this means for this series is that even if I don't get to do an episode every day, there will be episodes coming out at least once a week, or at least twice a week, and I hope to keep that up. I don't think a week will go past without me releasing an episode ever. So, well, unless something really bad happens to me, I suppose. So what it means for this series especially, as it will be a really long series, most likely, is that I will do my best to put the most amount of effort I can into every video, even if it takes me a few days to produce. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that that was the case with my recording and editing and production, and how long it might take, and etc. And basically the reason that I am back in the Forest of the Fallen Giants is to go kill the Pursuer. Now, I'm going to do this up on the rooftop, and not in the actual boss fight room. The reason for this is just because if you fight him on top of the roof, I'm not sure if he has less HP than in the boss battle itself, but I just find it easier to move about. The area to fight him in is a lot bigger. And also, the reason for my quick trip back to Majula right here was just to spend the extra souls that I had for some reason. I think I used some boss souls to level up just quickly, and I also reinforced my weapons. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm actually power stancing the 2 dual rapiers, because basically, if you have enough dexterity to power stance, you can deal twice as much damage, and that basically kills all of these enemies in one hit. And it also helps me take down the Pursuer in about 2 minutes, or probably maybe a bit longer than 2 minutes, because I'm not quite familiar with the Pursuer since I haven't played this game in a long time. And this Turtle Man is whooping my ass for some reason. He actually ends up... Actually, I'm not going to spoil it. It's going to happen in a few seconds anyway. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the Pursuer... I haven't actually played Dark Souls 2 in about... I want to say about 6 to 8 months. So I don't actually remember a lot of the boss's movesets, which is probably a bad thing. But fortunately with games like Dark Souls, boss's movesets and how to play pretty much just comes back to you naturally after you've played a game for about 300 hours. So with the Pursuer, I only get hit about 3 times, thanks to that kind of muscle memory. But I'm just going to briefly go into the Pursuer's... Actually, no, I'm going to go in depth into the Pursuer's lore here. Basically, I'll just summarize it, and then I'll explain it. The item description for the Pursuer's Great Shield and Ultra Great Sword state: the Pursuer hunts down those branded by the curse, as if each undead soul that he claims will atone one of his sins. And then the Pursuer's soul goes on to state this: the Pursuer, who seeks the bearer of the sign, will not rest until his target is slain. Now, these item descriptions are still very vague, and you probably still have a lot of questions about, for one, who the Pursuers are, to not what their job is, but who put them up to their task. Okay, so there's a few theories on this, and I'm not sure which could actually be true, but the Pursuers are kind of bounty hunters that, as their item description states, seek out undead to atone for their sins. I think that one of the most prominent theories is that Vendrick put them up to their task of killing undead to slow down the curse of undeath itself, so the land would slowly not be overrun by it. But unfortunately the land was, and now the Pursuers seek out undead pretty much relentlessly because it's still their job. Now, this is there's a few hit and miss theories with this. Like, one other theory could be that they were put up to their task by the goddess Velka of Sin, because they are actually trying to repent and kill undead so that they can repent for their sins. And there we just got the Ring of Blades, which basically just gives me more attack power, and that's another ring I'll be using. And don't think that this is the only pursuer, or that every pursuer is the same pursuer, like, because as you see, we just killed it. There is actually more than one pursuer. I'm just gonna fast forward to where we go pick up the Drangleic armor set. I stopped here just because I wanted to say that instead of having just normal undead soldiers here now, they have the royal swordsman from Drangleic Castle. This not only makes sense, but it also gives the area a lot more variety with enemies, and it's good to see that they're even doing that with just like small scale enemies and minions. So it's just good to see more variety in the levels as well. It's a kind of a nice added little touch. But back to the pursuer quickly. Like I said, he's not the only pursuer, and this could be because a lot of them were brought in to stem the flow of the undead curse by who? I'm pretty sure like, my opinion is by Vendrick, because it kind of makes the most sense. And later on, we will see the Lost Bastille, which is basically just a giant prison in the middle of the ocean, pretty much. And it could be possible that not only were the pursuers, and we just got the Drangleic mail here as well, not only were the pursuers killing undead, but they may have also been bringing them to No Man's Wharf to be put on the ship, to be sent to the Lost Bastille and the undead lockaway in the Huntsman's Copse, basically jailing the undead and keeping them out of the land. So they weren't killing every undead, they were putting some away, just like they were in the Undead Asylum in Dark Souls 1. And if you remember, we also saw the pursuer come flying in on a big black crow, and this goes back to the theory of the pursuer having ties with Velka, because if you know the lore of Dark Souls 1, you will remember that one of the most prominent symbols of Velka is a black crow, or a black raven. I'm not quite sure which one it was, but either way, it's a big black bird, and that is exactly the mode of transport that the pursuer uses, and it's also how we get from the Undead Asylum in Dark Souls 1 to Lordran. And in the area just before, there is also a bird's nest that is most likely the crow's, because you use it as you would the crow's nest in Dark Souls 1 to be picked up by the crow and taken somewhere far away. In Dark Souls 1's case, it is to go back to the Undead Asylum, but in Dark Souls 2's case, it is to go to the Lost Bastille. This is the same crow that was taking the pursuer around. Does this mean that it was taking the pursuer back and forth from the Lost Bastille, ferrying undead and undead souls around? It very much could be possible, because we've seen it. We've seen both of these things happen. So just connect the dots and it all makes sense. You're probably also wondering why I'm all the way down here again. I was just checking to see what requirements needed to be met to open that door again, and I came all the way down and realized that I needed the Iron Key, which you get in the Iron Keep. And I'm just going to kind of transition here to the bonfire again, so we can just get it on our way to the No Man's Wharf, and pretty much just progress the story, because up until now it's been back and forth between the Forest of the Giants and not much progression. I should probably explain what I'm doing, getting undressed. As you can see, I'm pretty much just testing out the speed and the distance of my roll. Obviously, with no armor on, you have a much better roll, but I couldn't remember what percentage of weight gave you what roll, so I was just testing out the full Drangleic mail compared to no armor at all, and it wasn't that different because I'm still under 70% weight. That means I can still pretty much fast roll or mid roll. I can't remember. I think in Dark Souls 2 it doesn't have the fast roll, mid roll, slow roll. It just has the fast roll and slow roll. Then again, it all depends on your adaptability, your ADP. I should probably explain what the Old Knights are, these big guys with the giant weapons, because I haven't had a chance to yet. So I think now is a better time than any, since this is pretty much just a transitional area. The thing with the Old Knights, though, is that they're just as vague, not if more vague, than the Pursuers. And this is one reason that I have a problem with Dark Souls 2. It's because even with their smaller enemies, like the Old Knights that are recurring enemies in Hyde, there is almost no backstory for them. Cyan Knights, like this guy on the other hand, there's at least a fleshed out backstory for them, because they're somewhat of more importance. But all the Old Knights say in their lore is that they were ancient warriors from a time now long past. But that's about all we get. And here in this chest, I'm about to pick up the first Sublime Bone Dust that we get. Basically what this does is it strengthens the power of the Estus Flask. Every time you use a Sublime Bone Dust, it increases the amount of HP you get back per use of the Estus Flask. Back to the Old Knights. There is little to no explanation for why they are in Hyde. The Old Knight weapons state that they were wielded by a warrior from a time so ancient that there exists no record of his endeavors. This is pretty much all we get, but notice one thing, it says wielded by a warrior, not warriors plural. It also says multiple times that this person was a man, as it says his endeavors. Now, this could lead us to believe that the Old Knights in Hyde are just statues that have been brought to life to defend the area. But before you go thinking that this warrior could have been Hyde, or the person that founded Hyde's Tower of Flame, remember that the item description for the weapons of the Old Knights clearly state he is from a time so ancient no records exist of his endeavors. This would mean that if Hyde's Tower of Flame was a record of his endeavors, that he would be Hyde. But none exist, therefore he cannot be Hyde or the once ruler of the kingdom itself. Now, I do have one theory on who this ancient warrior could be, and get ready for it, it's gonna blow your mind. You ready? I think it could be Giant Dad. Now hold on, before you say anything, just let it sink in for a second, until you realize that I'm fucking with you. No, but seriously, I don't think it's anyone that we actually know of in the game, because as we see, all records of him have been erased from the land. It could be possible that he was the greatest warrior of the Way of Blue, but we honestly have no way of knowing because the lore of the Way of Blue is so scarce. And now we are here in No Man's Wharf, but for some reason they decided that they wanted to change the location of Lucatiel. I don't know why they would want to do that. It's not a big deal, but I don't know, it's like, I thought this was her summon sign at first, but nope, it's Johnny 2x4. Great name. It actually made me laugh when I went up to it, for probably longer than it should have, and I don't know why. But yeah, we're here at No Man's Wharf. Lucatiel is gone, we'll see her later, when we go up to near where they throw the oil urns at us. But it seems as if No Man's Wharf is actually a bit lighter than it was in the original, which is strange, because you would think that for an area that revolves around darkness, and having a mechanic where you need to light up the area later on, they would want to keep this place as dark as possible, especially if they have enemies in this place that rely on the dark to attack you, like the little demons do. Or, well, not little demons, they're fucking huge with gigantic long arms, but you get my point. I don't know why they would make it lighter. Maybe it's because there are so many kind of unfair like foot traps in this area where you can just fall into holes and stuff. But other than that, it doesn't seem like a smart move to make in my opinion. I should probably also explain that anytime you see me sit down at a bonfire and then transition straight back to that bonfire I was at, that just means I took a trip back to Majula to level up my character and weapons, and oh my god, how did I not get hit by that arrow? Those are some iframes for you. And we'll just play on like that never happened. Anyway, I should probably get into some lore about No Man's Wharf. Basically, I'll do what I do every time. I will summarize it just for the sake of being fast and getting through as much lore as I can, and then I will explain that. And here we see a new NPC as well, Bradley of the Old Guard. And, oh my god, praise the Lord, they actually put in a shortcut in No Man's Wharf. And this is a huge deal, because you used to have to play up to a part where there was a kind of a gate that you would have to raise, and that would activate a shortcut, but you would have to go halfway through the level to actually get to the shortcut itself. So it's not really a shortcut if you look at it that way. So when I saw that they actually put that bridge in, I was over the moon. Anyway, I talked briefly about No Man's Wharf before when I was explaining the lore of the Basua, but I didn't go in depth into it, so I'll do that now. Basically, No Man's Wharf is a place where undead souls are brought to be ferried to the Lost Bastille. The Lost Bastille is a jail. This place serves as a port for a ship that then ferries them across to that place. So basically, No Man's Wharf used to be a settlement that has now gone hollow. Obviously, the people that were in the settlement originally have been ferried off to the Lost Bastille. And this guy was interesting. This guy can actually be used as a source of light, and he follows you around. He is non-hostile. He doesn't attack you. So you can use that if you don't have a torch yourself. You can just get him to follow you around, and he will light up the area. It was really convenient, and it's really cool that they've done this, because you need light in this area, otherwise you will get attacked by the demons later on. And here I was just trying to figure out if he was hostile or not, if he would attack me. But in the end, he ended up following me. And he follows me all the way up. He follows you around the whole level. But I do decide to kill him just in case when we get to the part with all the oil, he does turn hostile. It was basically just a safety measure that I took. These enemies that we see here, the Varangians, they're a bit Viking-like in appearance, I suppose. But they're actually more like pirates. And I'll go into this a bit more in a second, but for now we're about to meet Lucatiel, so I'll let her dialogue play out. And, oops, I actually do kill the guy right here. I apologize. He was only trying to be nice.
What is it? I don't know you, and you don't know me. Things are better that way. You are an odd one. Normally, people keep a safe distance when they see this mask. But you... I'm called Lucatiel. From the land of Mira to the far east, across the mountains. They say Drang Lake brims with powerful souls. And so I came to claim my share. But what a strange place. Even the rumors did not prepare me. You are an odd one indeed. I've always made a point of avoiding people, while you've made a point of engaging me. I can see that you are mid-journey. If you require assistance, I will help you. I come from Mira, a land of knights. My sword is always ready. Don't hesitate to call upon me. Whatever happens, I won't be missed. You are an odd one indeed. Well, I can see... I come... Don't hesitate.
So, basically Lucatiel's reasoning for being in Drang Lake is that she heard it was a place brimming with powerful souls, and she came here to stake her claim. Now, as we move along with her storyline and summon her to fight boss fights and learn what her actual reason is for being here, we will learn that she is actually also here to find her brother. And we do find him later on. He is an enemy invasion, and we have to put him down, unfortunately, because he has gone mad. Before that, we will have finished Lucatiel's storyline, and she will be pretty much defeated. Not defeated as in she will be killed by someone, but she has lost all hope, and she is starting to go hollow. We'll cover this more throughout her storyline as it progresses, but for now I just want to quickly jump back to the Varangians and what their purpose is. So basically, their item description states somewhere along the lines that they are kind of Northmen, as Vikings were in real life. Basically, their item description says that they come from a place north of Drang Lake, and if you follow the long coastline, you will eventually find their homeland. So, I'm guessing that they came to Drang Lake as Vikings, or more as pirates, to plunder and pillage. It also states that they were pirates who pillaged the northern coastlines of Drain Lake, and a former king led a campaign to capture the Varangians and enslave them at No Man's Wharf. So basically, the reasoning for the Varangians being here is because they pretty much killed a lot of people and plundered and stole, and then a former king of this land captured all the Varangian soldiers he could and enslaved them to work at No Man's Wharf, to seemingly band together and ferry all undead souls and beings to the Lost Bastille. This is about as much lore as they get within the entire game. They aren't a big part of it, which is understandable, but it's nice that at least some of the minor enemies in this game have at least a bit more of a fleshed out backstory, rather than just a stale statement that gives one line of description. I suppose it's just good to see that a lot of the enemies do actually have purpose within the world. Even though it doesn't really matter, I still find it weird that the Varangians get a bit more lore than the Old Knights. I just thought I should go into them because this is an in-depth run, and I'm trying to cover as much ground as I can in what little time that I have. I'm just going to fast forward for a little bit while I kill all these Varangian soldiers because it's not really very interesting and it's just me running around killing things, and there isn't much to talk about at all. So I'll fast forward to when we see our next new enemy and I'll get to talking about those guys. Okay, so we're about to run into these new enemies called Dark Dwellers, or rather Dark Stalkers. Other words to reference them are either Demon or, my personal favorite, Dooters. D-O-O-T-E-R-S. And that's pretty much what I call them within the game. If I was playing live right now rather than doing post-commentary, I'd probably be calling them Dooters. But yeah, as you can see, they have a high bleed rating, so if you get hit twice by them, they can do a lot of bleed damage, so you gotta be really careful. I don't know what their purpose is within the level. It seems as if they stick to dark areas, and they love the dark in general, and if you bring light towards them, they will inch back out of fear. But I don't know how they came about. They seem like they may have once been human, because sometimes when you kill them they drop weapons, and they also drop the tattered cloth armor sets, which means that they had to have in fact been able to wear clothes that humans wore. That's just a theory though, so it could in fact be nothing. But another theory is that they may in fact be monsters from the sea, and they may have just come to land. Like, there is really not much backstory on these guys. There's even less in the Old Knights and the Varangians, so it's very, very hard to say. But another thing I noticed is that Gavlan is not in that building. He has in fact been moved as well. And I start to get the feeling that there's going to be a lot of NPC placements that have been changed, among other things. And for a quick minute, I want to go back and talk about why this build that I've got running right now for the kind of early game, mid game, to end game sort of thing, why I'm using it. I've explained it briefly before, but I'm mainly using it to show people that may have not played this game before how easy it can be to have such a simple build get you most of the way through the game. I'll be using this build up until we get to the DLC most likely, because having just a straight dex build with two semi-powerful weapons that you can upgrade can just like obliviate everything. And that is kind of what you want. You want a build that is easy to get and easy to make, that doesn't kind of require much effort to use, like a magic build would, for instance. And you want that build to be able to get you through most of the game. That is essentially what I'm doing here. So for those of you that are thinking about playing this game, I would suggest that you go for a build like this one that is easy to create right off the bat. Because as you would see in the last 2 episodes, this build has already gone from 1 rapier to power stance rapiers and one-shotting most things. It kills these ones in 2 hits basically, 2 or 3, depending on if you get the power stance hit. And when it comes to most enemies, you can bring them down very fast, and it's really quite good. So if you are thinking about picking up Dark Souls 2 and giving it a try, I'm using this build to show you how easy it can be to get a running start. I've gone through about maybe a quarter of this game already now, just with this build, and I've had no trouble with it at all. I mean, not to say that you don't want to have trouble with this game and enjoy it as a hard game, but it shouldn't be rage-inducing. So this build is kinda here to help you actually get through most of those rage-inducing parts. I think the only place this build would kind of fail is when you have an enemy or a boss that has a pretty big weapon or a pretty big attack radius, because with the rapiers you kind of do need to get in really close to your enemy to be able to deal as much damage as possible, because if you look closely, I dealt about a quarter of his health then because the rapiers didn't go in all the way. Now if you just nick an enemy, it will do less damage than actually fully striking them. And I suppose another place where it would fail is if you're not comfortable with rolling yet and you're still using a shield. This build relies mostly on the speed of how fast you can get out of the range of your enemy's attacks and counterattack. So with counterattacks, basically it's when you dodge an enemy's attack and then you counterattack straight after, you can deal more damage. That's basically what the rapiers are for, because they have a higher counterattack rating. And essentially that's what you want to be doing. You want to be dodging and then counterattacking. So that's how you deal as much damage as you can with this build. But if you're not comfortable with rolling or dodging, and you like using a shield, this build may not be good for you, and you might not get the best use out of it. All I can really say about that is, using a shield is fine, but rolling and dodging is it's more fun, honestly. Standing there stagnant with a shield and just defending against your enemy's attacks is, it gets really boring after a while, and I think I only ever used a shield in my first and second playthroughs of Dark Souls, like Dark Souls 1, and then I dropped that shield because it was just getting too boring standing behind one, and you started to get the feel of dodging and counterattacking. It just brings a lot more liveliness to the fighting style, and your kind of repertoire of how you play the game. And here we actually see another enemy as well. These guys are called Nimble Shadows. These enemies were hired by Vendrick to basically put down hollows before they could fully hollow themselves. Essentially they're here in No Man's Wharf to put down hollows and then ferry them across on the boat to the Lost Bastille with the help of the Flexile Sentry boss that we'll see in a little while. And we're actually coming up to another new NPC called Gavlan. Now, he wheels and deals. Basically, you can sell stuff to him in exchange for souls.
Who are you? I, Gavlan. Gavlan wheel, Gavlan deal. Gavlan wants soul. Many, many soul. What you want. With Gavlan, you wheel, you deal.
Gavlan is part of a race known as the Gyrm. I'm not quite sure how you actually pronounce it, but it's spelled G-Y-R-M. It's kind of like a dwarf race of people, although they aren't very dwarf-like. Most of them are actually Gyrm warriors that are the size of Gavlan, but there are actual smaller ones as well, as we will see later on in a place called the Doors of Pharos. Gavlan is actually the only person in the entire game that you can sell things to, so if you kill him, then you're actually going to need to expend souls to revive him so you can once again sell things to him. In my opinion, Gavlan is probably the most memorable character from Dark Souls 2, beating out Lucatiel, Ben Heart of Jugo, and a few others actually, and this is mostly just because he's such a quirky, unique character. I feel like this is something they forgot to do a lot in Dark Souls 2. For me, Gavlan and Lucatiel are the only two characters in the game worth remembering. Ben Heart of Jugo doesn't really do much at all. You follow him throughout the game, and you can summon him at certain points, but other than that, he is pretty much useless, and his backstory isn't all that interesting. Lucatiel, on the other hand, has a bit more of a heartbreaking backstory, and whilst it's nothing special compared to those of Dark Souls 1 and the story of Solaire, it still gives a bit more flavour to the character. It would seem as if Dark Souls 2 falls short of what Dark Souls 1 achieved, mainly because they went for quantity over quality. They pretty much just went Oprah Winfrey with their NPCs. Like, you get an NPC, this area gets an NPC, this area gets an NPC. And because of the quantity of NPCs they had no time to actually flesh out all of their backstories and give them the quality that they needed. So, I don't know about you guys, but honestly, I didn't really care all that much about any of the NPC characters or quest lines in this game. Lucatiel was a bit hit and miss, and Benhart of Jugo absolutely had no substance to him at all, other than that fake Moonlight Blade, which I pretty much just killed him for anyway. I didn't even bother doing his questline until I realized that you needed to do it to get all the achievements. I wanted the achievement more than I wanted to do his questline. That is when you know that you don't have an interesting character. When someone wants to get an achievement more than they want to see how the character develops. That's kind of a bad thing. The same goes for Lucatiel as well, just on a bit of a smaller scale. What I find the most ironic though, is that Gavilan has pretty much no backstory and no questline, and he still ends up being one of the most memorable and favourable characters of Dark Souls 2. Anyway, that's enough ranting about Dark Souls 1 over Dark Souls 2, etc. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going around finding all the items in No Man's Wharf, so I don't have to come back here later and run through the entire level again to collect them. This is a breakable wall that is next to me on the left. There is a crystal lizard inside and a few items. So if you didn't know that that was there, then now you do. Another interesting thing is that they've put a fragrant branch of Yor in this chest, so you can now get to these shaded woods much earlier than before. And this is really good, seeing as the earliest you could get a fragrant branch before was at the Lost Sinner boss, which is in the Lost Bastille at Sinner's Rise, which is 2 areas away from where we are now. In this next chest, I pick up a ring called the Royal Soldier's Ring, which is another ring I'll be using for this build as well. Basically what it does is it increases your max capacity for weight, so you can have heavier armor on with this ring. And the reason I was attacking the chest just then was to make sure it wasn't a mimic, because now that a lot of things have been changed in Scholar of the First Sin, I don't know which chests are mimics and which aren't. They may have added more mimics, and that is a frightening thought, because I used to know where they all were, and now I could be totally wrong. I'm just going to fast forward one more time before the boss up to a guy called Carhillion of the Fold, which is, surprise surprise, another NPC, but I can't actually bring him back to Majula yet because I don't have high enough intelligence, which is actually another downfall of this build. Since I have no intelligence, I can't actually bring Carhillion of the Fold back to Majula, therefore getting an achievement later on. Anyway, I'll just quickly fast forward to when we talk to him, get his little bit of dialogue since we can't do any more than that right now, and then I'll fast forward to before the boss, because this episode is probably long enough as it is already.
I see light. I am Carhillion, and I've known it. I see. I am.
Now, I should probably just quickly explain what this guy is. He is a jailer from the Lost Bastille. I'm guessing his purpose on this boat is to basically just make sure that the passengers, the undead passengers of the boat get to the Lost Bastille safely so they can be put in jail, which is kind of fucked up. After this, I pretty much just go and summon Lucatiel of Mira because, for one, I'm not going to be summoning in this playthrough unless it is absolutely necessary for a character's questline. So that means I'll be summoning Benhart of Jugo and Lucatiel of Mira. That is to complete their questline and get the achievement, because as I said, I'll be trying to get as many achievements as possible. I'm summoning Lucatiel to do the first part of her quest. Basically, to complete her entire quest, you need to expend all her dialogue by talking to her and summon her a minimum of 3 times, and she must survive all the way through the boss fights. So that's what I'm going to be aiming to do. And finally, here we are at the Flexile Sentry boss. Okay, I have to say, this is the first time I have ever noticed this. The fucking Flexile Sentry is a 2-headed lizard. I always thought it was just a piece of armor. I have never seen it, up until this point, as a 2-headed lizard man. Every time I fight it, I always kill it way too fast to actually notice anything about it. The most ironic thing about this is that I should have known it was a lizard from the item description of its soul, the item description of which I have never actually read up until this point. It reads, "The Flexile Sentry is a merciless creature whose purpose is to punish the undead. This terrifying lizard-like creature oversees the ferrying of undead into the Lost Bastille." That's about as much lore as we get for the Flexile Sentries, but they do pop up in one or more places in the game, and strangely, in those locations they actually pose a bigger threat than the boss itself. With the Flexile Sentry down, we now continue on to the Lost Bastille. And up this ladder I go into a chest, and we actually do get our Pyromancy glove here, and our first Pyromancy known as Fireball. Now, I do like Pyromancy builds, and I feel like an idiot stabbing this, because I thought it was like another one of those shadow things from earlier. It just looked like a really dark part for no reason. There shouldn't be a shadow over there. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I do like Pyromancy builds, they are one of my favorites, and I probably will be using one for the Ivory King DLC. I'm just going to let this cutscene play. So here we are now at the entrance to the Lost Bastille. The Lost Bastille actually has quite a bit of lore backing it, so I'm going to save that for next episode, where we can discuss it literally in depth and maybe even dedicate the entire episode to it. Probably not, because that would be like 30 minutes for the entire Lost Bastille, but we do need to talk about the Lost Bastille and then Sinner's Rides as well, along with the Primal Bonfires, so there is quite a bit to talk about next episode. And I know I did promise that we would get to user comments in this episode as well, but what I'm going to do instead is wait until I have an entire episode that doesn't require much lore significance, and then go into user comments in one entire episode and discuss a whole lot of topics. So yeah, I'm just going to fast forward to the bonfire here, and then I'll say goodbye. Okay, so here we are. Once again, thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again next episode.